some roles start long before you step into them. They are shaped by history and expectations that exist well before the person involved even understands the weight of what they're carrying. Bazett Fraga McRemitz is a perfect example of this. Her life isn't just a series of her own choices. It's a path defined by a family name and a job title she inherited. As a sealing designation enforcer, her identity is essentially a contract. In the Mages Association, your bloodline and talent dictate your rank. Bazett didn't choose to be an enforcer in the way we choose a career. The clock tower looked at her rare lineage, lethal skills, and put her exactly where she was most useful. In a sense, she became a weapon designed to hunt down magi who were too dangerous to exist. In this world, efficiency and control always matter more than the person doing the job. The reality of Bazett's life is that duty isn't just a job, it's a ceiling. Even when she tries to move in a different direction, the weight of the system pulls her back. It's not that the association sees her as a rebel if she deviates, they see her as a glitch. The pressure to stay consistent, to keep moving forward in the same line, becomes so heavy that simply surviving the day becomes indistinguishable from following orders. Rather than fighting the system from the outside, Bazett expresses her agency through the way she carries herself within it. Her training and discipline don't erase who she is. They shape it into something the Mages Association can actually use. As Michel Foucault once said, where there is power, there is resistance. That resistance doesn't always show up as open defiance. Sometimes it's quieter than that, just continuing to act within something that's trying to define you. Seen that way, Bazett becomes what Foucault would call a disciplined body. Her movements, her decisions, even the way she thinks have been shaped by years of repetition and expectation. She isn't a puppet, but she understands the limit of what she's working within. Her will still exists. It just only matters as long as it doesn't break the machine. Bazett doesn't just exist in this hierarchy, she is embedded in it. She isn't an outsider trying to find a seat at the table. She's an enforcer who already knows her place and purpose. Her discipline is both her greatest strength and her cage. It allows her to function in an environment where authority and assignments are already set in stone, in a system that relies on people doing exactly what they're told. Her ability to stay consistent isn't about being submissive, it's about maintaining a sense of professional clarity in a world that would otherwise be chaos. To really get Bazett, you must look at the world she works in. Being a sealing designation enforcer isn't a prestigious office job, it's being the association's cleaner. She's the only one they send when magic goes sideways and becomes a threat to their secrecy. In the grand scheme of the Mages Association, Bazett lives in the tension between keeping order and dealing with chaos. The association isn't a unified government, it's a messy, political web of factions that only agree on one thing: magic must stay hidden. While other magi are chasing their own grand ambitions or trying to reach the root, Bazett is grounded in a much more violent reality. Her life is about precision and restraint, because the system she works for doesn't tolerate mistakes. This pragmatism shows up in her combat too. While most magi rely on ancient spells, Bazett primarily fights through close-range hand-to-hand combat, reinforced with runes and reinforcement magecraft. She doesn't rely on elaborate magecraft techniques in battle. Instead, she focuses on direct, practical combat methods that let her handle situations efficiently without necessary complexity. This invincibility is a core part of how her world works. Most people in modern society have no idea that there's a hidden layer of reality where magi are constantly fighting up to preserve mystery. Bazett isn't a hero in a cape. She's a practical agent sent out to put the fires before the public ever sees the smoke. She carries Fragarach, a weapon from the age of Irish myths. She possesses a rare biological compatibility with it, something the clock tower views as less as a human gift and more as a tactical advantage. But the clock tower doesn't care about the history or the soul of the weapon like that. To them, it's just a high-value asset, a strategic tool they pull out of a box when a specific job needs doing. That way of looking at it strips away anything personal. What's left is function, and that same shift carries over into the way she fights. As implied, Fragarach is at the heart of her kit, and it's a strange, risky thing to rely on. It's not a sword you can just swing, it's an answer. It only works if her opponent tries to use their ultimate trump card move. When that happens, Fragarach reverses the moment, striking first and canceling the attack before it can actually happen. But because it's so specific, Bazett can't just spam it. She has to survive using basic runes and physical reinforcement, essentially brawling and hoping her opponent takes the bait. That same reliance on control and timing carries directly into how she approaches the Holy Grail War. This mindset is why her entry into the 5th Holy Grail War is so unique. She wasn't some rogue fighter looking for a wish. She was a professional in a world of lunatics, summoned as a legitimate master backed by the association. Summoning Cuchulainn, a hero from Irish myth, should have been a moment that aligned cleanly with her role as a master. Beneath the surface of her orders, there's a quieter connection through her Fraga lineage, and it ties to those same mythological origins. even if that connection is more symbolic than personal. But that's where her vulnerability lies. That same focus on duty and structure is also what limits her, because she plays by the rules and focuses on her assignment. She's incredibly effective, right up until she meets someone like Kirie Kotomine, who doesn't care about rules at all. Kotomine didn't just beat her, he broke the system she was relying on. He exploited the rules of the Holy Grail War to ambush her, severing her left arm and take the command seals with it, effectively stripping her of her status as a master. It wasn't a standard loss, it was a total betrayal that removed her from the war before it even truly began. This brings us to FAH-guh-rahkh Ataraxia, which isn't a normal sequel, but something closer to a survival story inside of a fractured, repeating world. Trapped in a 4-day time loop through a contract with Avenger, Bazett is no longer living a linear life. But even when that world stops making sense, Bazett doesn't break. She treats a literal nightmare just like another day at the office, bringing that same methodological focus she used as an enforcer into a cycle that defies logic. This loop is a strange shared connection tied to her own existence and Avenger's own hollow nature. Within it, she simply continues to act as if structure still exists. This creates a high-pressure rhythm to her combat. She has to rely on staying disciplined in a normal fight, waiting for an opponent that may never come. If her opponent plays it safe, the fight becomes a grueling test of endurance where her best move is useless. It makes her fighting style and her life a constant gamble on situational control. She has to read the room perfectly from the start, or she is stuck in a long, dangerous grind where her biggest advantage never sees the light of day. That same pressure doesn't stay confined to combat, it carries into how she relates to other people. All of this draws to a very specific circle around Bazett as a fighter. She isn't a jack of all trades who can adapt to any situation. She's a specialist who needs to fight in the right conditions to truly shine. Her strength doesn't just come from breaking the rules, but following them with terrifying discipline. The real tragedy of her character isn't that she lacks power, it's that her greatest potential is locked behind a very narrow set of ifs and whens. You can see this clearly in how she relates to the people around her. Bazett isn't someone who just talks about her feelings. She's defined by what she does. Her partnership with Lancer is a perfect example of this. On the surface, it's a cold, professional contract, but underneath, there's a sense of mythic alignment between them. They work together because they function together, not because they had some deep emotional breakthrough. This also explains why she is so quickly caught off guard by Kotomine. It isn't just a personal failure, it's a total mismatch of worldviews. Bazett lives by the assumption that rules actually mean something, that the system has a binding force. Kotomine, on the other hand, sees those same rules as toys to be played with or discarded when they get in his way. In the end, Bazett didn't lose because she was weak. She lost because she assumed everyone else was playing the same game she was. She thought that because a structure existed, people would actually follow it. Kotomine proved her wrong by using those same boundaries against her, turning her own integrity into her biggest blind spot. Carrying on what we mentioned from FAH-guh-rahkh Ataraxia, Bazett isn't in a war anymore. She's trapped in a surreal, repeating 4-day cycle. While her mind is active in this cycle, her real body is in a suspended animation, bleeding out in a secret chamber, kept only alive through outside intervention and stabilization, which includes Karen Hortensia. This isn't a natural sequel to her life. It's a self-contained bubble shaped by Avenger, and it should be noted, Bazett and Avenger mirror each other. One soul, forced to be a monster, the other a woman who spent her whole life trying to be a machine. But even though the world around her stopped making sense, Bazett doesn't change. She tackles a literal nightmare with the same business-as-usual logic she used at the clock tower. She's trying to apply the clock tower's rulebook in a world where the rules have already been set on fire. Her bond with Avenger is the anchor of the entire mess. Avenger in FAH-guh-rahkh Ataraxia is the embodiment of all the world's evil, a servant who didn't choose his purpose, but had it forced on him by others. Together, they're a total mismatch for a normal Holy Grail war, a master with no war to fight, and a servant stuck in a cycle that leads nowhere. They aren't progressing towards a goal, they're just persisting. Bazett keeps up her discipline and her methodological routine, but the world around her is no longer built to reward that kind of behavior. This really highlights the core of who Bazett is. In the 5th Holy Grail War, her role was violently stolen from her. In FAH-guh-rahkh Ataraxia, that role doesn't even matter anymore. The system is broken, yet she stays exactly the same. Her internal logic of duty and directness doesn't collapse just because the world does. Even when everything is falling apart, Bazett keeps moving forward in the only way she knows how. Her consistency isn't just a reaction to her environment, it's something she carries through it. Bazett occupies a weird space within the Nasuverse. Most characters are driven by grand myths, massive egos, or the desperate need to reach the root of all knowledge. But Bazett isn't an aspirational hero, she's a professional. Her story isn't about surpassing her limits, it's about staying coherent when everything else around her stops making sense. She doesn't try to transcend the system or rebel against it. She just remains consistent, even in environments that no longer function properly. Ultimately, Bazett's story doesn't follow the typical path of growth or victory. Instead, she's constantly being dropped into systems that fail to hold. In the Holy Grail War, she was cut out before she could properly begin. In Hollow Ataraxia, she's stuck in a loop that refuses to end. It's not that she keeps failing in a traditional sense, it's that her life keeps being interrupted before it can actually resolve. She is a woman of continuity, living in a world that won't allow continuity to mean anything. Her persistence becomes something quieter than victory, something closer to endurance without closure. Even when everything around her collapses, Bazett doesn't shift into someone else. She doesn't adapt her identity to match the instability. She keeps her direct, disciplined approach and her procedural way of thinking, even when there's no clear path forward. Her stability doesn't come from the world, it comes from the structure she carries within herself. There's a line from Hannah Arendt. The most radical revolutionary will becomes a conservative the day after the revolution. In Bazett's case, it's not about politics. It points more towards how people continue behaving after structures that shape them are gone. When the world collapses, most people change or break, but Bazett continues as if the framework is still there. She maintains her operational discipline, even when the system it belongs to no longer exists. Even her weapon, Fragarach, reflects this. It isn't a constant source of power, it's conditional, almost absent until the exact moment it matters. Most of the time, she's just a normal human working within normal human limits, relying on training and persistence to carry her forward. When you look at Bazett's story as a whole, it isn't about escape or transformation. It's about persistence through interruption. She remains inside unstable systems without ever letting them redefine her, and that leaves a final, uncomfortable question. When everything that once gave structure to your life disappears, why are you still continuing?